Hi, I hope I'm live, and I hope you hear me. Is the sound is fine? Oh, great. So, oh, I'm so glad to hear. I'm so glad to see you. Thank you for coming. So, hi. Um, my name is Kutty or Kate. Um, so I decided to try to make some streams. Uh, Привет. So here, simple rules. Um, I will make, I will draw some fan art and make a Q&A. If you ask me in English, I answer in English. If you ask me in Ukrainian, I answer in Ukrainian. Sorry if you make some mistakes, I'm a bit worried. Отже, прості правила для моєї української аудиторії, що якщо мене запитують на англійській, я відповідаю на англійській. Якщо мене питають на українській, я відповідаю на українській. Сподіваюся, все зрозуміло. Сподіваюся, це буде працювати. So I know that two language stream could be a bit messy, but I will try my best to make it work. So hope you like it, hope you enjoy this time here, and don't hesitate to ask me anything. I'm here today to answer your questions, and sorry if I make some mistakes, and sorry for my English pronunciation. I'm not a native speaker, but I try my best. Okay. So I decided to sketch some Zelda Fanart because I'm so excited about this game. I just can't. It's oh my god, I don't know. I guess I didn't wait any game like this. So let's make some Zelda Fanart. And um, oh, one more thing. I I could be a bit slow because I'm new to Twitch and I don't really know how everything works. So uh, excuse me, please. Um, Отже, якщо у вас є якісь питання, будь ласка, запитуйте. І вибачте, якщо я буду трошки тупити, трошки запізнюватись, тому що Twitch для мене дуже нова платформа, я ще не дуже добре розумію, як тут все працює. Але сподіваюся, що все вийде. Сьогодні трохи помалюємо фанарт по Зельді. І сподіваюся, що більш-менш регулярні будуть такі стріми. Мені б це дуже цього хотілося. Okay, if no one have any questions at the moment, I will just talk about Zelda a bit because, oh my god, did you see that trailer? It's just so beautiful. I'm so excited. Oh my god, I just don't know what to say. It's Zelda is a very special game for me. Breath of the Wild especially. I played several games, but Breath of the Wild it totally stole my heart. When I played it for the first time, I was experiencing a very strange feeling. It was like I returned to my early childhood, and I experienced a feeling of excitement about a new game again. Something just so childish, so beautiful, and the feeling that it gives me, it's just incredible. And I really hope that the second game will uh, do it again. As for the software, I'm currently drawing in Siam, It's side 2 in particular. I also draw in Clip Studio sometimes and in Procreate rarely, because my iPad is pretty old and it just doesn't work too well and too long. I also use Photoshop for editing and for my comic. I draw my comic in traditional, as you know, and I use Photoshop for editing my pages. As for Sai, it's a simple problem, but I find it very comfortable. I think I'm just too much of traditional artist, so I find the program that is simple the most comfortable to me, because I use um, just a couple of tools mostly, and drawing in digital, I try to emulate how I drew in oil paints. Um, it's also, as for the digital art, I struggled finding my way in working digital for a very long time. I was painting using watercolor mostly, and it was really difficult to find some common ground between watercolor and digital art. Uh, and I found something that worked for me only after I started painting with oil paints, and I decided that I'll try to emulate it in digital, and I love it. And as for this fake oil painting technique, I find Sai just more comfortable to use it. I love Sai's semi-soft brushes and also brushes like this. I I love painting using two brush, the round one and the flat one. These are my main brushes. Доброго вечора. Якщо є якісь питання, задавайте для тих, хто тільки що підійшов. Додаю, що якщо питання англійською мовою, я відповідаю на англійській, питання українською мовою відповідаю на українській. Отже, запитуйте все, що хочете. Буду рада з вами поспілкуватися сьогодні. Про Так, я планую зробити Draws in Your Style. Я поки що думаю, що зробити. Я ніяк не хочу ніяк не можу це вирішити, тому що, це така взагалі тема. Кожен раз, коли я замислююсь про Draws in Your Style, у мене стільки думок, і я постійно думаю, це ж треба намалювати щось таке, щоб людям було цікаво перемальовувати, ще щось таке, щоб було достатньо легко перемалювати, але щоб було достатньо цікавих деталей. Тому що я от по собі знаю, коли я малюю Draws in Your Style, я зазвичай обираю речі, на які я дивлюся, така, типу, я хочу це намалювати. Мені цікаво, як це буде в моєї стилі. І це, в принципі, єдине, на що я дивлюсь, коли обираю. Тому мені хочеться, щоб зробити щось, що у людей викликало такі самі емоції. І отже, я, напевно, трошки занадто заморочуюсь через це, але мені дуже хотілося робити щось цікаве і, напевно, щось пов'язане з моїм коміксом. Ось так. For everyone who is curious, it was a question about Draws in Your Style. And yes, I'm planning to make a Draws in Your Style, but I'm still thinking about what theme to choose what to draw, but it will relate to my comics, I think. Hi, glad to see you here. Um, as for my dream artist job, oh yeah, I have one. I have a dream artist job. I I dream about working on my comic as my main job. Oh, it would be so great. I'm currently can't afford this, but I had such plans before the whole Sky invasion started. I planned to make some break for my freelance uh, job and concentrate on my comic for some time. But I made this plan just before the full Sky invasion started, and it was destroyed. Yes, a lot of stuff were destroyed. So I have to postpone these plans, but I didn't give them up. I still want to become a full-time comic artist and work on my own project. It's my dream. Truth to say, it's my dream for my very early child. Not about comics in particular, but when I was a kid, I always wanted to create my own fantasy story. The medium in my imagination changed. For example, at the beginning, it was something like a cartoon. Then I wanted to write a book, but then I decided that I want to uh, draw something resembling a manga. And then I realized that comics is my format. It definitely is. So I still going for my dream, and I hope I will make it come true one day. Щодо стриму, щодо стріму, це не зовсім перший стрім, це такий майже перший. До цього я, чесно, робила один стрім на дуже маленьку аудиторію знайомих, щоб потестувати, як це взагалі працює, тому що я взагалі не була впевнена, що у мене з першого разу все вмикнеться. А так, ну, як публічний стрім, це так, перший стрім. І я б дуже хотілося зробити. Мені дуже хотілося б зробити це чимось більш-менш регулярним. Е, Не знаю, мені насправді давно дуже хотілося зробити стріми, але я завжди дуже нервувала, та і я, в принципі, зараз нервую, напевно, це трошки чутно. Але я сподіваюся, що я стану себе відчувати з цим трошки якось нормальніше. Ем, І про що я загубила мислю, вибачте. Адже я сподіваюся, що я такі стріми буду робити, незважаючи на те, що я нервую щодо таких стримів. Я б дуже хотіла їх вести. І сподіваюся, що вам також це буде цікаво. Зараз, чесно кажучи, дуже незвично малювати, розуміючи, що всі бачать, як я малюю, через це так нервово, насправді. Але і цікаво. Я думаю, я звикну. Чому ні? Тому що, ну, блін, я хочу спробувати. Сподіваюся, вам також буде цікаво це подивитись. Um, as for what inspired my story of Arcane Flames, well, it's kinda it was simple and difficult. Um, as in two words, I think it was inspired by my childhood horror stories and my teenage traumas. Yeah, something like that. And my recent trauma as well. As for long version, I always wanted to create a fantasy story, and also I always wanted to create. I always loved reading fantasy and especially like gothic fantasy stories. But it's kind of niche genre, and I struggle to find something that I like, and and I decided to create something that I would like to read myself. It may sound strange, but it's so true. It's like I don't, I can't find a story that I want to read. I will make the story. A bit silly, but so true. And I also can say that some stuff at my comics was inspired by local urban legends from my home city, Odessa. Um, I don't know if you know, but there are catacombs under Odessa, and these catacombs are one of the biggest in the world. Odessa catacombs are even bigger than Paris catacombs. When I was a kid, there were a lot of openings that weren't sealed yet, and when we played somewhere, our parents always warned us to avoid any strange holes, any strange entrances, and I clearly remember how some kids have been lost in catacombs. Um, and it was so scary, but also so curious. Uh, Adults didn't tell us what's lie in there. I didn't understand why. I understand now because it's actually not that intriguing and interesting in reality. I think it's they didn't think it would be that interesting for us. But just because they didn't tell us about catacombs in details, we were so excited and so enchanted. And we told this horror story we invented ourselves to scare each other. And we were so curious and so interested in what lies under our city, what lies in catacombs. And to add a mystery and horror, the soil in Odessa isn't very like solid, and it sometimes happens that a part of a road could fall down into a catacomb, and we just know that, oh my god, it's a hole, it's a like entrance to an abyss. It's scary and stark and so mysterious and intriguing. And I was so enchanted and scared by Odessa catacombs, so I I just realized that I added all these stories into my comic because it's like my childhood key dream, like key memory. So I think my own city inspired the story quite a lot. My favorite comic and manga series, or it's definitely Full Metal Alchemist. I just adore this series. I am a big fan. I read the manga several times, and I watched anime several times, and I love, I love, 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 love this anime manga series both. I just hope I could create something as inspiring as cool as Full Metal Alchemist. It's definitely my favorite. Um, as for the comic and or manga series that inspired to start drawing initially, I think it's Clamp manga. Clamp. When I was a kid, there weren't much anime licensed in Ukraine, but there were several, for example, Sailor Moon, Pokemon, Digimons, and Cardcaptor Sakura. Cardcaptor Sakura was my favorite one, and I started to uh, look for some information about this anime, its authors. I I found out that it was created by Studio Clamp. I read the manga, and then I read a lot of Clamp manga, and I think the studio inspired me to start drawing myself, to try drawing comics. My favorite Clamp manga is Clover. It's very short and unfortunately unfinished, but it's so beautiful, so charming, and the world is so incredible in Clover. I just love it. As for the process of making a page of Arcane Flames, oh, it's a good question. um, Initially, everything starts with story, of course. Everything starts with thinking about actually a story, and then it's going to roots. I either or um, make some sketches of pages, like storyboard sketches, or write dialogues. Some things I start with dialogue, and some things I start with drawings. It depends on which mood I like to convey and which is like primary reason of this part of the story. For example, if I want to tell some um, story that I find important, I start with text document and dialogues. And if I want to convey some visual image first, I start with sketching and dialogues go secondary. After that, I make storyboards. I can even show you. Why should I just tell about it? I can show it. Just wait a minute. So it looks like this. I draw such simple storyboards to navigate my story. After that, I draw them in digital because it's easier to change everything, to change frames, to switch places, and everything. After I don't storyboard separate pages, I storyboard a big chunk of stories. For example, I have a storyboard for 150 pages at the moment. I can't storyboard separate pages because I just lose the feeling of pacing. I find it very important to pace my stories properly, and I can do it only by storyboarding a lot of pages at once. After a storyboard is completed, I transfer a storyboard to the paper and make pencil sketches. After that, I ink them. I color them with ink and watercolor. I scan them then clean the scans, edit the scans, because some pages have almost no editing, some pages have a lot of editing, just some pages even have quite heavy editing. It happens. Then I add text and the page is done. As for the page, one page take from 2 to 3-4 days, depending on the page complexity. Yeah, it's as far as if you can't find a story you would want to read, make it yourself. It's so true. I think I genuinely think that it's better way to go for it. I think that writing a story, you should think about what story you would love to read. No one want to read stories that it was created just to please someone, because you should love your story first. It's your creation. You should want to create the story. What's the point if it's not like that? I love that when authors are passionate about their creations. I always find it charming, and I can't help myself but to fall in love with such story. Oh yeah. As for the catacombs, it's a big system of natural caves and artificial tunnels. When the city started to grow, people just use a local stone to build the city, and they just took it right there where they built it. So they created a lot of artificial tunnels in that way. Later, when the support started to grow, there was a law that allowed free trade in a separate district, and people started to uh, use catacomb to sneak some goods to the district unknowingly for the government. So catacombs became like a big criminal hub. And after that, during the World War II, catacombs were a place where partisans were hidden. So, and also there was a point in Odessa history when the poorest people lived in catacombs as their home. So Odessa catacomb have a very big and deep story. We have a museum dedicated to this landmark, and there are even excursions and tours to the catacombs. Some of them are a bit casual, like um, get to show you an entrance, a museum, like it in catacombs, and so on. And some of them are kind of dangerous. My relative once visited a tour like that. Um, it was a hike into catacomb that took 3 days. He said it was like okay at first, anxious on the second day, and terrifying on the third, because when you are in the dark, when you are underground, it's really it's really easy to just panic and give up to your anxiety and everything. As for FMA, I think I prefer Brotherhood just because I love manga a lot, and I prefer Brotherhood because it sticks to manga plot more close. However, I think that the beginning is stronger in original for me. Yeah, Card Captor Sakura is such a sweet and such a story, and it was such a big inspiration. It was like sweet kids fantasy for me. Yeah, I collected stickers related to Card Captor Sakura, and I even created some of my cringy OC that I inserted into Card Captor Sakura. It was cringy, but it's kinda sweet. Чи грала в інші серії Зельди? Так. Я грала в Skyward Sword, зовсім трішечки грала в Twilight Princess, тому що, на жаль, я грала на приставці знайомої, і тому мені не довелось пройти її всю, але я б дуже хотіла пограти в Twilight Princess повністю. Я грала Wind Waker, також не повністю, на жаль, тому що я грала на емуляторі, і там щось потім пішло не так. Ну, як буває з емуляторами. Потім я ще грала в Hyrule Warriors, і на цьому все. Ще хочу дуже пограти в Link's Awakening, але я думаю, вже придбаю його якось потім, тому що зараз в мене пріоритет, звісно, Tears of the Kingdom. Thank you about my storyboards, but they actually are pretty simple. I just need to I just try to draw in a bit in some details because I know myself if I allow myself to draw in not so much details, I end up drawing something that just it doesn't work at all. For example, I had some storyboards which I drew and that I opened them and was like, ah, what is it? I don't remember. I I think it's hand or face. What I drew? What it was about? What's the dialogue say? Oh, it says something unimportant. And what did I draw here? So to avoid situation like that, I try to give some details in my storyboards to avoid just making make them unusable for myself. More urban legends from Odessa. Let me think. Well, it doesn't come to my mind immediately, but it definitely has more urban legends. I will think about it and I will prepare my homework to the next stream. Okay. Oh, about by the way, about cringy OCs. My very first OC was kind of furry one. Her name was Jill, and she was blonde cat, like anthropomorphic cat. She was really cool. like, of course she was cool. And I couldn't decide if she's a cool princess, a cool warrior, or a cool match. So I made her a cool princess with sword and magic, battle magic, of course. I think I should draw her one day. It's so cringy, but it's so cute and fun. I still remember that receipt. Так, Tears of the Kingdom забирає останні гроші. Я це настільки відчуваю. Мої думки в кінці цього місяця були: ось ці останні гроші будуть на предзамовлення. Це саме воно. Okay, I'll prepare some urban legend from Odessa to the next stream. Yeah, Osis just have to be cool, especially a first Osis. As for cringe Osis, fun fact, I think Run at the beginning was very cringe Osis. And not like cringe, but it was the worst offender of cardboard OC. It was such a big way to create arcane flames in a film which exists today. Thank you for coming. Um, okay. So there's no more questions at the moment, so I just concentrate to on drawing Zelda. I'm sorry, I'm a bit slow. It's so unusual to speak and draw at the same time, but I will get used to it. I am pretty sure about it. Um, it's actually pretty new experience to me, and it's kind of fun. I try to say I was interested in creating some streams for a very long time, but I wanted to create a stream in which I could communicate with all of my followers, so it had to have English in some degree at least. And I was very anxious about my English level. I use English in writing quite a lot, but I rarely speak English, so I was so anxious. I think I have to thank my friend from Romania for finding some confidence in speaking English, because I trained a bit thanks to her. So I found some confidence to finally create a stream and talk to you directly. So I don't know if she hears it. I think no, but if she is, I want to thank you. Thank you, but I'm glad you understand my English, but I know that I have a lot of room to improve. Я сподіваюся, що будуть збережені записи стрімів. Я поставила цей стрім на запис, я цього це не тестувала, тому я не дуже впевнена, наскільки це працює. Але я сподіваюся, що це працює і що цей стрім буде в записі. І загалом сподіваюся, що поступово я трохи більше почну в цьому розбиратись, і вже це вже буде трохи більш організовано, трошки так більш нормально. Вже якось буду працювати. Ось що хочу пострімити. Сподіваюсь, вам також це буде цікаво. Yeah, I think it's a good practice. So I will practice and I hope I will improve myself. Thank you. I try my best. Ага, це зникає через 14 днів. Дякую, що повідомили. Я про це не знала. Буду розбиратись. Я настільки мені це все в новинку. Ну, буду вчитись. Окей. By the way, I draw faster most of the times, but I just it just feels so unusual to draw when someone actually watches and also speak at the same time. But it's a very fun experience. Even when I made some videos with drawing, with drawing some works, it was so unusual when I was realizing that, oh my god, someone would see it later, someone would watch how I draw. Oh my god. And I always thought about it. And it's even more now when I stream live. It's just a bit anxious, but so interesting. Also, as for my that's inspiration for my comic, I can also say that I drew a lot of inspiration from my own city and from Eastern Europe and Central Europe in general, creating this world. Um, when I was working on my first story drafts, I visited Prague, Latvia. I also visited Krakow in Poland. I made a lot of photos of my own city, and I can say that these cities like Prague, Riga, also Tallinn, Krakow, Odessa, and Tel Aviv in Ukraine, they inspired the whole architecture style and the appearance of the world a lot. So Arcane Flames have heavy inspiration from Eastern and Central Europe. I mostly used references from a lot of Eastern and Central European cities while working on it. Not just the one that I took myself, but also a lot of stuff from like books and photos, stock images, and everything like that. And even today, working on the latest pages that are currently in the progress. I took some references here in Bucharest, where I am now. So it continues. As for the countries which I visited, I was in Czech Republic, in Poland, in Latvia, in Estonia, um, in Turkey, and mm, in Romania, of course. It's actually not the first time I'm in Romania. I visited Romania before. I visited Moldova very briefly. And I actually visited Russia, and it was a very strange experience, truth to say. I don't, I didn't want to visit it again, even before the full-scale invasion started. Yes, Arcane Flame is spanned by certain time period. I mostly took inspiration from second half of 19th century and early 12th century, with more emphasis on the late 19th century. I just love architecture style of that period. And also, Arcane Flames contain a lot of influence from late Gothic period, like 15th century. I decided to make like two main styles involved. One would be inspired by Gothic, and the other one would inspired by Eastern European 19th century style. The Gothic period correlates with Arcane Flames medieval period, in which mages ruled this country. And late 19th century is for modern day stuff. So it has a lot of meshed stuff from these periods. I also took some inspiration from 50s, like 20th century 50s, but just for some costumes, just because I love this silhouette. Truth to say, I am a big um, history of art nerd. I love that kind of stuff. I studied history of art in college and in university, so I just find it so interesting. I always fond of looking at buildings from different eras and styles. So when I visit different cities and countries, it's just my totally favorite, and I adore historical costumes. I just love them. I love them so much. It's manic. For example, I can even watch a film just for the sake of costumes, or I can stop to watch it if I don't like costumes at all. I am a big historical costumes fan, and I just can't avoid adding some Easter eggs to my own stuff. Yeah, the silhouette I used for Anna's dress is so 50s, and the same silhouette was used for the dress that Al actually wears for the funeral. It's the same. I don't know if you noticed, but Anna's dress and Al's funeral dress have a lot of similarities. It's very similar in silhouette, and it even has some very similar elements. I created them in that way because I wanted to show that show that Anna and Alves they have a lot of common ground, a lot of stuff that makes them click, but at the same time they are very different in fundamental level. That's why it's the costumes both very similar but very different. And if Anna's costume is full of her enthusiasm, optimism, and it actually costume that she wants to wear on her dream job that she imagines. As for Alves, its funeral costume is painted in her grief, and it's not the beginning but the end. Yeah, I think I put a lot of thoughts in my costumes. It's true. Привіт. What show or movie has my favorite costume design? I think it's Game of Thrones, especially the middle part of it. When it comes to the medieval costumes, they actually have a lot of misconceptions about them because medieval period was very popular in 19th century, but people didn't know much about costume history back then because history of art wasn't such a big science as it is today. They were pretty new in learning about that, and they made a lot of, but it was very popular, and it was popular in mass media, and mass media of 19th century made a lot of mistakes presenting medieval costumes, and a lot of those mistakes that they became common even now. For example, some of early Robin Hood movies they contain those fictional 19th century medieval-ish costumes. And as for the actual medieval costume, it has a lot of interesting elements that aren't widely known because of that. And those elements, they could be even funny for a modern person. So they had to be adapted to just don't look unnatural in modern days. And when I saw those costumes from Game of Thrones, it was like, oh my god, they took exactly those not so well-known elements from medieval costumes and adapted it in a way in which they are both very recognizable but also incredibly stylish in eyes of modern people. I was just astonished. It's such a good costume design job. It's just a high level of professional job. I even tell about it and I just even feel it in my body, this excitement, because it's incredible. It's just incredible. The other title that in which that is in which I loved historical costumes, historically inspired costumes a lot. It was Witcher, the game Witcher 3, Wild Hunt. They took inspiration from some costumes from 16th century, from a period that isn't as widely used in media, and all of them are so competently made and so cool and so inspiring. And I just ended up collecting all those armor for Geralt and made my fashion Geralt because I just love those armors and costumes. Also, as for the costumes, I just adore Final Fantasy XIV. These costumes are so fantasy style, but what I love about them when you start to look at those 3D models close, you see all those stitches, all those details, all those tiny little things, and all these fantasy costumes they actually look like they can be done, can be sewn, can be sewn, and it's so cool. It's so rare to see such level of costume work in online games, and it's so inspiring. It's another one my fashion game. uh, any recommendation for good costumes in shows? Um, you mean something good to watch, or something like what to do to make them good? I think I didn't understand the question. Uh, well, I just love Game of Thrones regarding the costumes. Mm, but I think that the latest seasons, among other problems, were too fashionista. They lost that medieval, heavy medieval inspiration to them. It became more fashion style. It's cool too, but it just wasn't um, so so awesome as the previous costumes. It's it's, it's for me personally. Um, I actually quite enjoyed the first of Hunger Games costume wise. Those costumes were so ridiculous, but so highly fashioned in those ridiculousness. I don't even remember this film that well, but I remember those costumes. Um, let me think. Let me think. Um, I I also love costumes in Lord of the Rings. I just love how that every country, every nation has this very distinguishable style to them. They just when I was studying costumes, my teacher always told me that it's important not just to create some pretty costumes, but to uh, make them connect uh, in when you, for example, if you create a fashion line, when you create costumes for some um, play, for some game, for some any media, those costumes shouldn't just look like separately fine pieces. They have to convey some theme, if, even if they should be very different for different characters. They have to connect in some way and to look like they belong to the same universe. And I love that about Lord of the Rings, that all of the costumes look like they belong to the same world, but also it, when you see any costume, it's really easy to tell apart which nation it belongs. And um, and they have they all they show the characters, they show the culture of those nations, they show this world, they just tell a lot. It's really a good job, I think. For example, it's the same thing that I didn't like in the Witcher TV show costumes, because they they weren't good, but the wording they were very differently not good. They didn't click together and didn't tell this connected story. By the way, I really like the style of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I I just like how unusual this fantasy style is, and I love the fact that they took a lot of inspiration from ancient Japanese culture that isn't as widely used, and I think it's very inspiring, very unique. I love titles that have some inspiration from the real world regarding the costumes, even if they go in a very different direction, and and it and end with something very fantasy, very unusual, very unearthly. It's really interesting to see those Easter eggs, those little tiny things that relate to actual historical costumes. Well, I should check the first Hyrule Warriors. It would be interesting to see. I also adore how different and how unique Zelda Breath of the Wild and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom style-wise is. Um, I have a little dream of myself. I couldn't accomplish it at the moment, but I hope I could create it in the future. I'd love to create some Zelda cosplay, but not with original Zelda costume, but with some um, original costumes inspired by mashing together um, Zelda style and Ukrainian costume. I think that this style works quite good with native costumes, and I would love to make such an experiment. I think it would be a very fun and interesting project. For example, I'd love to make a Ukrainian embroidery inspired by Zelda ornaments. Yeah, I love costumes. I just adore costumes. I can talk about costumes for hours. It's sometimes it's really bad. I I even can bore people talking about costumes. It's my pet peeve. Um, when I write about some lore stuff related to my comic, on my pattern, I mean, can't help myself but to end up writing some lore related to costumes. um, I think it's because of one thing. When I was studying costume design in college, um, I realized that the costumes tell so much about people that they wear them. Um, for example, I I started to understand connection between some countries more, um, not by studying actual history, but by studying costume design, because all those ornaments, fabrics, details, they just tell about people, about their connection, about their trade. Um, they clearly show which countries um, have had some trading experience, which had closer connections. It was such a big revelation for me, and I started to view history in a very different way. And when it when it comes about history, a lot of history books tend to tell something like a story of wars, but I think it would be important to tell more about the story of material culture and art because they tell a lot about people. Um, Tempest. Uh, just to say, I love Shakespeare. Um, I I really like Shakespeare plays. It's it's so fascinating that that those plays were written um, several centuries ago, but they're still so interesting. So they have much, so many ways to interpret them, and they could be shown in such a different ways. And The Tempest is my favorite of Shakespeare's plays. I don't know why, actually. It just has something that I like about it. I don't know if it's because of its magic story or like the story behind of this play, because it could be weird as Shakespeare's farewell for the theater. But I adore Tempest, and I I I'm glad that I choose this STEM for my college work. It was a great experience, and the difficultest and the most difficult costume that I ever made in my life. By the way, I costume wise, I'll. Did you see the film Books of Prospero? It's an equalization of The Tempest, and it has some really interesting costumes, especially a Prospero costume. The Prospero's costume in those film is inspired uh, by the costume of Venice Doges. Yeah, I studied costume design in college. I studied in theater college as a theater costume designer. Yep, that's me. That's my main orientation. Um, when I was close to finishing my college studies, I realized that I'm more interested in actually drawing costumes than in sewing them. and that I really like drawing. And it's when I was thinking that I like to draw costumes, the keyword was not costumes but to draw. So I decided to continue my studies and to study for a painter. That's that's my story. So yeah, I even have a diploma that says that I am costume designer. It says that I'm a specialist in designing theater and historical costumes, something like that. And I can say that it was that the diploma and that experience guaranteed my first job. My first job was in game company. I worked as a concept designer. Um, I worked mainly on costumes, but on environment concepts too. I worked at those game company for a while, and then I decided to continue my art studies. I studied for an artist, and then I went freelance. That's the whole story. Oh, Midsummer Night Dreams are really cool too. It's awesome. Which one was the most fun of the characters to draw? As for the Tempest ones, I think the Prospero was the most interesting one. He is just such an interesting mystery figure. He has so much going on. I think he is the most interesting and complicated character in the story. And I also enjoyed drawing spirits a lot. It was yeah, it was so much fun to design them. I think I would design them differently now, but I still like those old designs. Um, the fact that the spirits aren't well described in that play gives so much freedom in interpreting them. Yeah, as for the tempest, I think it could you could put it in that way that it's a marriage of three beasts, Hamlet, Romeo, and Juliet, and meet some in Summer Night Dreams. I like this idea. Yeah, it would be really interesting um, to try to design them anew. I don't think that I would do it in any near perspective, but I will keep it in mind. Maybe I'll find some inspiration in the future and return to that idea. By the way, I was thinking about creating a new costume design series, same as I did for Sailor Moon and the Wicked costumes. But I still haven't decided which series to choose. So if you have any ideas, any suggestions, I would be open to review them, to think about them. I have some like variants, but I still think about it. Sailor Moon was really fun to design because uh, it's like so universally well known, and all those characters have such distinguishable traits and their own taste in fashion, which make it even more interesting to design costume for them. It was a really fun project, and I'd love to make another project like that, but not with witch's costume, but with something else. It will depend on which title would I choose. No, I haven't ever did any Craftcraft Sakura design. I don't know why. I think I somehow uh, love original design so much that I don't even think about designing any of my own. Maybe something like that. I especially adore those pink and black uh, cat dress that Sakura wears. It's so cute. I don't. It's kind of simple, but it's so cute. I love those things that um they're quite simple, but so distinguishable and iconic. Oh, just like outfit is still very cute too. As for the title that I considered, one of my ideas was designing something like classic fantasy outfits for characters from Final Fantasy VII, um, like something like that. Another variant war that is quite similar um, to Sailor Moon is Wings. Truth to say, I'm not a Wings fan, but I can't deny that this title have a lot of room for interpretation, same as Sailor Moon. So it's just make it very easy to redesign and to work with. Um, I don't want to make such a series with Zelda in a moment. Don't know why. I think I just enjoy drawing Zelda like it is. But maybe I'll change my mind. I don't know. So that's my thoughts at the moment. I was thinking about creating such series for Genshin, but I think I need a break from Genshin Fanart. I just want to concentrate on different stuff at the moment, so I think it wouldn't be Genshin. Well, which is a very good variant too. Um, oh, thank you. Um, which is kind of fun too. I think that it would be really fun to make some. Oh my god, I know that would what would be interesting to make for which. Uh, talking about which, I just recalled another clump property, Magic Knight rares. I think it would be quite a fun task to decide to design some Magic Knights rares style outfit for which. Wouldn't it be fun? Yeah, which which prof- are so cool. It's like I don't know how to describe it. It's when I was a kid, it combined two of my favorite things: dark fantasy and magical girls. I was astonished. I love them with my heart passionately. Um, as for my favorite, I think. Um, I think my favorite was Cornelia. Oh, did they really were named after cast? I didn't know that. It's fun. Um, I think my favorite was Cornelia, and when I rewatched Witch, I for some reason re- related to her a lot. Not like her fashionable girl stuff, but her more like what the hell we are doing thing. Because when you see it as an older person, you're like, oh my god, it's so dangerous. I feel you, Cornelia. You're right. It's dangerous and it's totally crazy. But when I was a kid, I found Will the most relatable. Oh, that's fun. I didn't know that. I also tried to draw or to read some witch comics when I grew up. I didn't have them when I was a child. And it was such a strange experience. The first comics that were created by Barbucci, they were straight up amazing. I love them. They were so awesome. But then um, Disney started to change artists, authors, and it was so strange. It was like every new author tried to insert something they found interesting and to totally forget about the previous stuff. And sometimes the previous authors returned and recalled stuff that they did, but forgot stuff that another author did. And what the hell was going on with Tyranny's romantic life? I just didn't understand it. It's such a mess. It, those comics are so strange. Yeah, I think that changing writers, it's always a really risky thing, and those the stories tell shows why. It can be for good, I understand it, but in some cases it end up like those comics. Yeah, by the way, I had a period when I was fond of Magic Girls genre. Um, I wasn't that little. I just was in period when I wanted to uh, cover my heart with syrup. Yeah. And I watched quite a lot of magical girl stuff. Um, and the one that ended up a big news for me uh, was Lolly Rock. It isn't well known, but it's so well made and it's so fun. And I love that it actually has those cute crystalish fantasy world. It's uh, it's a shame that wasn't completed after and it was unfortunately closed. I'd love to see where it go. Oh, well, I didn't watch Power Rangers regularly when I was a kid. It's sad to hear that something like that happened. Well, one thing I once drew Always in Madoka's costume. I had a sketch like that. It's pretty old, but I will try to find it somewhere eventually. Um, Yeah, I drew her in Madoka dress with Kyubey. So yeah, I kinda drew Always like a magical girl. Okay, I'll try to find the sketch and include them in my future archives of my DeviantArt stuff. I should continue archiving those stuff. By the way, if you didn't know, I am transferring my old drawings from my DeviantArt to my Patreon, and I will have something like a bit more organized archive there. I just don't like the mess with DeviantArt, so I want to delete my art from there, and I posted. I used the DeviantArt for years, so it's quite a lot of work to transfer everything. Yeah, Madoka is awesome. I love the show. Um, the only thing that I about Madoka that makes me sad is the fact that it created all those magical, dark and greedy magical girl genre, and they just so rarely work. But the original Madoka, it's just so amazing. I love that show. Yeah, so many authors try to replicate Madoka, but no one accomplished it. Madoka is just really unique. I think that the problem is they try to be Madoka too instead of being themselves, because it's actually cool to create like a dark magical girls um, show, but they should concentrate on being original instead of being another Madoka, because Madoka already exists. Who else create Madoka? Um, like, you know, yeah, same thing. I can't recall them. I can like describe one, two of them, but just in very general details, and I can't even recall their names. And it actually shows that they. Oh my gosh, I I actually felt her hairstyle. Eh, it's okay. It's fine. Yeah, I watched a lot of magical girls stuff back then, and I think that those period of mine ended on those Madoka replicas. They made me tired of magical girls genre. And I switched to something else. Talking about anime, I recently watched Esclafone. I can't believe that I didn't see it at all in all those years, but I finally watched it recently, and it was a really interesting experience. Um, I I was impressed how original TV show was so like Final Fantasy inspired. It's so visible and it's so cool actually. And as for the movie, it's just so beautiful. I could I think I would understand it if I see the original TV show, but it doesn't matter because it's just so beautiful. All those shots composition is just astonishing. I really like titles with fantasy, like with big, interesting fantasy worlds. I It's my favorite thing. I think when you just see a world with all those costumes, architecture, designs, the world that you feel like it's lived in. It's has its own history. Something is going on there. It's my ultimate favorite, and that's I love those things in such stuff as Full Metal Alchemist, as Zelda, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, and Witcher too. Oh, Goblin Slayer, or Berserk. Berserk, it's such a cool thing. I love Berserk. Oh my god, Berserk. I'm a big fan actually. Uh, the only my pet peeve is the fact that the author messed up with some costumes so much. I it was really fun actually. For example, there was a chapter in which he include historical costumes from both 16, 15, 15, 18, and late 19th century. And it was so strange to see the address that it should be near some um, railway station, uh, like put it into this medieval world. I was shocked. I think that he just googled some European historical costumes and put it there. It was really strange. But aside of that, the world is really beautiful, really impressive, and I genuinely love how the author drew everything and all those um, armor, all those monsters, so cool, so beautiful, and it's just so well drawn. It's amazing, and the story is so cool. I love Berserk. I can't stress up how much I love Berserk. Так, стрім буде збережений. Ну, точніше, я сподіваюся, що він буде збережений, тому що я не впевнена, що воно працює, як я сподіваюся, воно працює, але я дуже сподіваюся, що стрім буде збережено. As for the Goblin Slayer, I heard that it was inspired by D&D setting a lot. I think I didn't watch much of it. Wasn't my cup of tea. I was hoping for some dark fantasy, but then I thought all those cute girls eating ice cream after all those goblins, and the tunnel shift was so swift and so drastic, and it was just so strange. I don't know, it's not my cup of tea. I see. By the way, I watched Vox Machina TV show recently, and I actually loved it a lot. Talking about D&D. I didn't know about Critical Role. Previously, I knew that they existed. A lot of my friends are into Critical Role, but I didn't watch myself. And this show like introduced Critical Role to me, and I started watching the streams too. Yeah, I remember everyone talking about Goblin Slayer, and it was everyone was talking about Goblin Slayer and the Hero of the Shield, and I was like, "What's what's the thing? I should check what's going on." And I watched a bit of Goblin Slayer, a bit of Hero of Shield, and was like, meh. I not my cup of tea. Okay, bye. So okay. Mm. I as for the fantasy, as for the more or less recent fantasy anime, I really liked the Acceptance of the Bookworm. I love the world building there, the German inspiration, um, and I love the fact that the story is so grounded and so personal. I just really, I actually love this genre of like grounded fantasy. Something like Wolf and Spice, Wolf and Spice, for example, with where we just observe that those fantasy worlds and problems that are real to those who inhabited it, instead of just facing some world-shattering events, saving the universe and something like that. Uh, so if any one of you know any like TV shows, anime from those like grounded fantasy genre, I would love to check them. By the way, I once saw an anime. I can't recall its name. It's a shame. But it was exactly in those genre, and it was really interesting. It was an old anime, a pretty old one. It stylistically it was kinda resembling the 12 Kingdom, I think. It was about a person who train winged fantasy creatures and raise them. It was really interesting and unusual. Oh, I didn't see Snow White with the red hair. I heard that it's kind of sweet. I think I should check it sometime. Talking about red hairs in anime, I'm very hyped about the second season of The Magus Bride. I loved the first season, and I will definitely check the second one. I I really like the personality of the main heroine and the world. Its Celtic inspiration. It's really beautiful, I think. Yeah, the end of the first season was kind of messy. I can't remember a big part of it too. It's it's actually strange. But the first part in the whole world was very charming. I'll definitely check the red hair, the Snow White with red hair. As for the fantasy romance, I really loved um, what was called The World is Still Beautiful. It was called, I think. But it isn't really a romance, kinda, because it's kinda romance stuff free. But it nominally belongs to the genre, and it was really sweet. It's more like um, the story of personal growth than than anything romantic. Something like it was called something like "And Still the World is Beautiful," something like that. It's about uh, an arranged marriage between two kingdoms, and a princess from one kingdom was sent to another kingdom to become a wife of those kingdoms' king. But after arriving, she discovered that the king is still a child, and of course, the marriage had to be postponed, and everything romantic isn't on the plate. And it's more a story of a growth of those girl, and a story of a, a growth of those boy who had a lot of going on because he had to become a king in such young age, and she ended up helping him to deal with all his emotions and responsibilities. Another fantasy story with some grounded stories that I like a lot is Mushishi. It's this one is a fantasy that is inspired by Japanese setting, and it's about something like that I called it kinda a very Japanese witcher. I describe it like that. Um, it's a series of story in which the main hero deals with the stories caused by some otherworldly creatures, but uh, all those harm that they cause, it's not because of some malice, but mostly because they are very different from people, and very different on fundamental level, like very different life forms. So they can harm people just by accidentally making contact with them. I feel kind of sad that um, in latest years it was mostly isekai anime when it comes to fantasy. I'm not a big fan of isekai. I have some titles that I like, but I don't. I'm not a big fan in general. I think I actually don't like in isekai. Most of the like modern isekai. For example, I adore 12 Kingdoms. It's isekai too, technically. And I love Magic Knights, Rares, and the mystery game. And Esclafone was pretty interesting too. The pet peeve I have with modern isekai is the fact that the most of isekai anime have those. You know that fantasy world. You know. We will not explain it, we will not describe it because, you know, those fantasy world. Generic fantasy world. Everyone knows. And it's so dull. I love those fictional worlds. I love to explore them, to know more about them. And those uninspired worlds just make me lose interested in those titles. Yeah, it's just like it actually is like, you know, that world from generic RPG. Not from the good ones like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, but the generic one, you know. I think my all-time favorite anime ship is Roy Mustang and Riza. They're just such a power couple. I love those ships. I also pretty fond of Alucard and Integra ship. And talking about modern anime, I really like Yor and Lloyd Forger. They are such a sweet couple. Yeah, I made an art with Roy and Riza. I even made two arts with them. It's like the Roy and Riza ship is in my head. It's like I'm not interested in what you think. I just think it's canon. I'll die on that hill. Yeah, I hope there would be some stuff between Yor and Lloyd because it's really painful when they just continuously tease the audience but don't deliver. And Lloyd is uh, Lloyd is really sweet. I just don't know. I love him as a character a lot. I didn't expect that I would like his character so much. Like Yor is sweet, but Lloyd is my favorite. His passion about saving his country it just speaks to me. Talking about Spy Family, I didn't expect that I would love that anime that much. I actually was a bit of annoyed when it popped up everywhere, um, and I thought it would be something generic, but I am glad that I gave it a chance because I loved it actually. It's really sweet and I like the manga. Um, and I hope it would go in some interesting direction because uh, it ended up a lot more than I expected. Yeah, and also I like Anya so much. Anya is adorable, and I'm so glad that they made her such a dark child because I don't really like those anime trope of uh, those anime girls that act um, like sweet, innocent, but not childish. And Anya is just such a goofball. She's so dorky, so adorably uh, awkward. I love the fact that she is such a child. It's kind of even refreshing to see such a child in anime. And I also like that Anya is fond of violent stuff. I can relate to that a lot. When I was a kid, I was fond of fantasy. I same as Anya watching some um, spy stuff. I watched something like Conan Warwar, Conan the Barbarian, and I was like, oh my god, yes, swords, swords! Give me a big stick. I will imagine that I have a sword. So I can understand Tanya. I was kind of similar child. Yeah, I was imagining that I have a sword. All my all my toy uh, dogs was knights that fought a big scary monster my mother's had. By the way, when I was a kid, my favorite my favorite cartoon was The Pirate of Dark Water. Um, and it's so not so PG cartoon, can I say? And I watched it when I was so little. I think it inspired my tastes a lot, like a lot. When I was rewatching those Pirate of Dark Waters cartoon, I was like, oh my god, it explains so much. So that's why I love this stuff. Huh. So yeah, I was in dark fantasy from a very early childhood, and I can understand Anya. By the way, I really like Zelda with short hair. It's a shame that I didn't draw her in with this haircut yet. I really like how she looks. She's such she's so adorable, so sweet. I don't know. I love this hairstyle of hers. Oh, I hope we'll see more of Zelda soon, so I would know how some parts of this costume actually look, because it's hard to understand some parts yet. Oh, Red Riding Hood arts. Uh, Red Riding Hood. Oh, inspiration is such a strong word. It's more like a poor horniness. So yeah, horniness inspired my Red Riding Hood. Truth to say, I just love pairing Alvis and Run, but I know that it's too early to even think of it when it comes to the main story. It could distract me. It could worsen the flow of the story, the plot, everything. But I have all those energy that I have to put somewhere. So I decided to just isolate it into something separate. And when I feel like I want Olivis and run together, I just go and draw something from my Red Riding Hood owl and feel it is. And don't put it in my story and my plot early, because it will just ruin it in that way. So it's not like a fully fleshed out separate story. It's more like um, what what would you call in English that metal rod to lighting to uh, flash into? It's that. Yeah, lighting rod. It's that simple. Thank you. So yeah, you can call my Red Riding Hood owl just a lighting rod for my horny sauce. Привіт! Також дуже рада тобі тут побачити. Дуже давно з тобою не спілкувалась. Як там Юкі? Юкі чудово, він насправді краще за всіх. Я просто всім би таку психіку, як у Юкі. Юкі це неймовірна собака. Навіть коли ми з ним бігали, ховалися під час повітряних тривог, він на мене простився в стилі: навіщо ми це робимо? Катя, ти що дурна? Його не лякають сирени, на відміну від мене. Його нічого не турбує. Він живе своє краще життя. Він нарешті навіть почав нормально їсти. Просто я хочу собі такі ж сталеві нерви, як у моєї собаки. Це неймовірно. Він дійсно в цьому плані дивовижний. Це навіть пес, який, на відміну від багатьох собак, полюбляє, коли людяні місця і дивиться на феєрверки. Я не знаю, що з цим собакою, але в нього нерви зі якогось сталевого жгута. Так що Юкі, Юкі живе чудово. Всім би так жити, як Юкі. Так, Юкі best boy. Він такий very good boy. Nick as grandpa in Au. No, Nick would be a woodsman. Look, he's more like when I was thinking about that, I imagine him kinda the same hunter as an Alice there. They both are hunters, and Alvis trying to uh, hide the fact that she has something messy going on with the wolf. And Nick being a uh, naive good dog that he is. I always imagine a good boy golden retriever when I imagine a Nick. I also had canon that Alvis became uh, a huntress because she followed the to Ewan because of Mark, because he was like, Alvis, I had to go to become a hunter. So we had to say goodbye. And Alvis like, oh my god, we will go too. And then she ended up just liking do it what you do. It's so Alvis like. I think I should draw Nick. I totally forgot about him because of working in the first part of the comic. It's too easy to forget him at this point because he will appear in the second part, and the second part will kinda be Nick's story. So it kinda looks like he isn't that important at the moment, but he is a pretty important character actually. I just mm, I just end up thinking about other stuff because I'm very into the first part of the comic at the moment. Yeah, it's kind of the same as in main story because he always went to catacombs following Mark and her master and ended up finding Ron. By the way, do you have any questions about my comic? I I will not spoil anything, eh, anything important, but I can spoil some stuff. Oh, what's the deal with the nurse's hair? Well, she belongs to the one of the three actually currently existing magic orders, and those three magic orders have quite a lot of, like, not all of them, but the two of those three magic orders have quite a lot of ancient traditions going on, and it's just a tribute to traditional fashion style. Kind of the same as you can see in the sketches of these traditional magic costumes I made for Alvis. Your hair in silhouette kind of resembles the silhouette of the hood that Alvis wears when she wears a traditional outfit. Those medical stuff, they actually belong to magical order of healers. and it actually has two branches, and you could see both of them on the first pages. The one of them tend about living, and the other one, and the other branch tend about the deceased ones. So the sign of the nurses and the healers' foreheads kind of resembles an eye, and a sign you could saw during the funeral. It is for a shut eye. It's two symbols of the same order, but corresponding with the different branches of those order. So yeah, the figure in black that you saw during the funeral is from those order as well. As for the orders in general, there are three currently existing orders in Andhra. The one is those order of healers, and the two other orders are military orders, both of them. As for the rest of the mages, they don't belong to orders. They had to have magic license to operate, and Alvison is one of those mages. And as for Nick, he actually belongs to one of military orders, old one. Such a complicated pattern. Oh, thank you. Glad you like it. I'm currently working on the next pages, but I decided to postpone releasing them, and I will release this next subchapter instead of releasing them page by page as I made before. So there will be like more pages at once next time. Almost at once. I may post them with little intervals, but the next time it will be more content at once. I'm glad you think so. Phew, that's a really complicated pattern. I am actually so excited to tell more about Ken Flame's work, and I always have to um, stop myself to avoid any major spoilers. It's especially relevant when it comes to Ron's story because his story is so tight with a lot of stuff going on, and I'm so eager to tell it, but I have to wait. Yes, I'll definitely do more archive posts on Patreon, and also I will make more lore posts. I can even tell which lore post will be the next one. The next one will be a post about some important points in Andra's history, and like not a detailed retelling of Andra history, but more like some points of Andra history that is relevant to the current events. As for my other overseas stories, well, it's a complicated question. Uh, just to say, I, I just, I just kind of not in much. mm, I don't. I just don't in mood to not in mood to continue working on the story about Sky Pirates. Maybe I'll return to it eventually, but I I just think I would postpone it and um, just leave it on hold until I find new enthusiasm in working on the story. Um, of course, I will draw some Naya stuff eventually. I think because Naya is kind of more of mascot than a character just for the story. I think, but I'm more interested in developing Arcane Flames at the moment. It's just closer to my heart now. Truth to say, when the full Sky Invasion started, I was I couldn't draw and work on my project for several months, for almost a year even. It just I felt so disconnected from my stories, from my uh, personal stuff, my worlds, my imagination, and everything. And I archived a lot of work in the process because it was really strange to revisit it. It felt like it was done by some other completely different person than myself. But as for Arcane Flame, it was really different because if when it comes to other stuff, I felt that I don't feel like talking about that anymore. That I don't find the story relevant anymore. But when it comes to Arcane Flames, a lot of stuff that I was that I found hard to understand and convey in the story, it became clear to me. But I had to take a lot of time to reconsider a lot of stuff because I understood that this story contains a lot of moments and experience that I actually want to tell. And if other stuff lost its sense to me, the Arcane Flames, it kind of have a lot of new sense now. And I just want to tell a lot more than I wanted in the beginning. Sorry if it sounded a bit messy. It's hard to put everything into words. It's a lot of feelings. Yeah, it's a passion story. Just to say, the first part of Uncanny Flame, it's a very personal story because it grew a lot from my personal experience, from um, from experience that I came through when I was a teenager. Um, I put a lot of personal experience of going through depression. Um, I changed a lot of stuff, of course. It's more about emotions than about actual events. It This story doesn't contain any personal events and any personal history. And don't think about it like that. It's just a lot of personal emotions that I came from. So it so yeah, the first part of Uncanny Plains contain a lot of personal stuff about depression, anxiety, the friendship that it wasn't really friendship, love that it wasn't really love, misconception, and a lot of other stuff. But and it a lot of the stuff is fleshed out in Alvis' history. I could say it, and it continues its Nick's history. Nick's story also contains a lot of moments like that. And as for recent events, I always had a lot of troubles with understanding and conveying Ran's story. For example, when I just started to write the story, he was the most complicated character for me. Not because he is actually like that complicated character. It's more like I didn't fully understand him. I started to understand him more when I became older. And I understood what I actually want to do with his character and his story during the last War and latest events. I think it's something like that. So yeah, Arcane Flame is really personal story to me. For example, I recalled it's so attention, we are going to a territory of dark humor. Um, a In the year previous to full-scale invasion, I was working on Run's story, and I was like, I should research some information about war PTSD. It would be really important to understand Run's character. Where should I find this information? How can I find it? Do you have any good sources about war PTSD? I'd love to understand this experience. Haha. I am diagnosed with PTSD now. Yay! So yeah, be careful with your wishes. Eh, But the the bad part, I think it's somewhat hidden um, to revisit your experience, your complicated experience, your heavy experience through art and through um, like creating something good from something traumatic. That's how I feel it. So thinking about that, I am not only put my character into traumatic events like a lot of artists and authors do. I put myself into reviving traumatic events too. Yay! And truth to say, I'm really passionate about Rocky poems. I just really want to create a story, and I hope I will succeed at it. I hope. Sorry, it became somewhat a bit darker. Well, dark fantasy doesn't born from light stuff. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words and for listening to it. By the way, talking with some of my friends who write their own stories, they frequently told that some of those friends told that they feel anxious about putting their own traumatic experience into their stories, like opening up too much. And for me, I'm kinda comfortable with me. I always thought it's important to be open about such topics as mental health um, and dealing with those kind of problems. So um, I'm pretty open about stuff I'm dealing with myself, and I'm fine even somewhat hidden to talk about such kind of stuff in my stories. So I personally don't have much problems with opening up about my own traumatic experience while writing my stories. It's not something that I want to understand me right. I don't want to say that it's how it should be. It's just how I personally work. When it comes to mental health and personal experience, it's always important to understand that every person have their own reactions and have their own experience and deal with those kind of experience in their own way. It's just my way to go through it. Yeah, I think those two. I actually think that the real purpose of art is making people feel something, like recalling real emotions, and people feel emotions mostly because they um, they find something and they can relate to that something that mirrors their own emotion. I always thought that the really important part is actually emotion, and you can relate to some emotions that other also trying to convey, even without reliving those kind of experience. For example, um, when it comes to emotions of grief, there are a lot of many kind of loss, and you 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 sometimes can't relate to particular experience of loss because you didn't lose like I don't know a relative, a body part, something like that. But you know that feeling of loss. You can relate to those kind of deep feeling of losing someone or something important to yourself. So I think it's really important to talk on language of emotions instead of language of particular events. And I think the same kind of stuff goes with trauma. So a lot of we all know how it feels to feel lonely, to feel anxious, to feel vulnerable, to feel sad, alone, that kind of stuff. To being afraid of something, to um, be scared of future. We can we can be obvious to someone's concrete experience, but we all can understand those emotions because we all experience very similar emotions, I think. Thank you so much. You're so kind. And I really thank you for coming to my stream uh, and listening to me uh, talking about all those kind of stuff. I hope I will make it a semi regular event. I kinda enjoyed. By the way, talking about Esclafone again, um, the thing I think that made me think a lot about it. When I watched the movie, it was so messy plot-wise. I think I wouldn't understand it instead if I wouldn't watch the TV show previously. But I I think that I would understand it on emotional level anyway because even it despite it has such a messy plot, it was so clear when it came to emotions. And I was thinking a lot about it recently, that I want to create stories that can convey emotions in those clear way. I still have a lot of room to grow as an author, as an author, and as a writer. And I really want to improve myself and to write those kind of stories that talk on an emotional level. I'm thinking a lot about writing, actually, because even if I had a big hiatus in working on my comic, I'm still working on the story and the plot, and I'm writing it actually, and I had a lot of stuff planned, and there is a lot of behind the scenes work on the world and the story. It's somewhat unusual to draw a stream, so I draw a bit more. Um, I feel a bit more stiff and I draw a bit more slowly than I usually do, but I am sure that I will get used to it, and I hope to draw something a bit bigger eventually. Yeah, world building is it's a task as big as a world. It would be fair to say that. And I think that world building is one of the most fun part of creating any fantasy story. It just in the same tale, in the same time, all those possibilities that are almost unimaginable, but also creating a rule and some creating some rules and some restrictions to make it work. It's really fun. I think I would be comfortable with streaming once a week. Um, I'm not really sure about a particular schedule. I think I will try to stream when I feel like at first, but I hope I will test which time and what length is working for me, and then decide on some more stable schedule, something like that. I just want to test some stuff because before making any decisions that would work in long perspective. Yeah, it's sometimes difficult to stop yourself and to um, to actually write story instead of writing just about the world. It's really deep, really easy to fall deep into um, those abyss of creating this world and all its history and its physics and its biology and how it works, and lose yourself completely into it. As for me, I think that the method I find working for me personally is the method that George R. Martin described. When you describe the the place of my events in more depth, um, but the far part of the world is, the more foggy it becomes. Like it's like you stand in the middle of some open world RPG, and you see the textures and the objects nearby uh, clearly, but the objects on the horizons are all foggy, and the textures aren't detailed. It's something like that. I, it's uh, it's how I personally write my worlds. Yeah, it's a rabbit hole. By the way, talking about rabbit hole, um, when I'm thinking about how I want to feel the plot of Arcane Flames, I always think about it as a rabbit hole. I really wanted to give that impression to reader, like you go into the story, but it becomes um, but it be, but you understand it more about the story and more about the story and every different lawyer. I wanted it's a story about stuff connected with those deep catacombs under the city, and I wanted to feel like going into such a deep hole, into another level too, into plot level as well. I'm glad to hear that. So yeah, when when it comes to describing like how how I want my story feel, it's totally I want to feel it like a rabbit hole. It's the same with Alia's story when uh, she went to catacombs to try to find some traces of her master and Mark, her friend and boyfriend. But she ended up finding Ran and all those um, stuff related to Ran, and himself he himself has a really complicated story that go deep into the past, and she tried to find her master, but she revoked a lot of deep secrets that her master tried to find. So it will be a lot of those kind of stuff. A lot of stuff when you, it's just like when you uh, try to open a closet to take, I don't know, some t-shirt, but you end up stumbling on some family secret um, hidden in those closets. The- It, I want to tell those kind of story. I just can understand that I had to um, like hold myself to not overcomplicate everything, and to give answers, not just questions. because it's just too much um, in too much stuff that I want to put there, so I can't have to think about what I actually have to put and what leave aside and what make clear, what leave intriguing. It's kind of the same with my horny owl. Uh, I have to hold myself to not mess up. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff that can be put into some spin-off and tiny stories. For example, I even wrote a little side story recently. I don't know if I will make something of it, but maybe I will. It's a little story about Alvis run and a short trip to catacomb that will took place between the first part on which I actually am working right now, and the second part about the one where Nick appears. So I already have one fully written side story, and I have to think what to do with it. Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah. By the way, this side story is exactly a story like I described before. It's my exercise in trying to create some story about emotions. So if I decide to actually draw it, it will be more about trying to convey those kind of story and to um, make those kind of exercise for myself. I'll still think about if I will actually do it, but I have it fully written down. Oh my god. I think I will end up doing it eventually. I will definitely end up drawing some Red Riding Hood horny comic. It will just all go in that rabbit hole, I think. um, I just know that time to time I will draw some art related to that horny owl. I can't help myself. I will just do it. I need it. I am a weak human being. And yeah. And I think that I end up with some horny owl art book content eventually and just put that into some kind of horny art book. Into that will definitely will be hidden under a paywall because it's horny art book. Yeah. It's just my future. I see it clearly as day. It's easy to fall into a rabbit hole. The world is full of different kinds of rabbit holes. And also, what's make working on those horny owl fun for me? It's not just the poor horniness of this stuff, but also the fact that Alvis and Ran are kinda the same characters there, but they are free from a lot of heavy stuff in their backstories. So I can to develop their characters free of those traumas that carve their personalities. So yeah, Alice and Ran are kind of the same in canon and in Horny Owl, but the only details that makes it different are those traumas related to arcane flames. For example, Alvis is um, um, is a bit is a lot more open in those owl stuff because she didn't have those experiences that made her to close up and try to hide her emotions quite a lot. And as for Ron, he's kind of a lot more easygoing, you know, stuff. Yeah, you can put it like that. Always but happy. Always in her happy awkwardness and dorkiness because she is kind of like that, actually. Um, she was uh, uh, she was trained to behave well when she was a kid, and she tried to be those kind of good girl lady. But she is actually very awkward and dorky and silly. She'll um, open up more eventually in the canon too, but it will it it need time and a lot of events. Yep, and I I really want to show those journey of others. It's a lot of stuff ahead. I really enjoy writing for Alice. She is actually a very enjoyable character for me. And I also like those fact that when she loses her facade of those well behaved lady, she she make all those awkward faces and she's actually pretty awkward person. As for Ran, he has a lot of stuff going on too. And that's a rabbit hole of its own. He still is one of the most difficult characters to write for, but it makes him really interesting. Just to say, he was a really cardboard character at the beginning, but he changed drastically, and I find really interesting to work on him, and also really tricky. He just have a lot of stuff in the past, a lot of past that forged him into a person that he is, and it's really interesting to develop into it. And talking about Ran and Alves, I think it's for me knowing uh, what kind of characters they are and what kind of stories that I want to develop for them. Uh, I really find interesting some misconceptions that people have about them because of those images that both Alves and Ran try to show. Because both Alves and Ran, they um, both are those characters who try to who are pretty close and try to appear not a person that they really are. Um, it's less intentionally when it comes to Alves and fully intentionally and thought about when it comes to Ran. So when it comes to popular misconceptions, the first one that is Alves is actually very like adorable, cute girl, like very kind and sweet, and but she actually have her dark sides as well. But I actually really like that about her. It's make her kind of really interesting for me. And as for uh, Ran, um, well, um, he isn't. A lot of people just assume that he's some nice guy that want to help Alice, but he kinda isn't that nice of guy actually. Well, come on, he's um, a person that she found in those catacombs, and and he comes to her really horrible dreams and that kind of stuff. He isn't that white and fluffy. Yeah, I always write fan fiction. Yeah, you can say that. Yeah, that's true. Always, she actually is pretty. I always told that if Alvis lived in real world, I totally can imagine her some like author that writes those um fantasy erotic books. Yeah. So I think that she has those kind of hobbies of her, and she she isn't like open enough to actually tell herself, yeah, I want to write some fantasy erotics. So she just have those gig of hers that she write those fan fiction uh, after reading some books that in which she finds some enjoyable characters. And also writing is like very typical stuff for Alice. She actually have a journal that she writes. I will even show it eventually. And she is pretty organized when it comes to writing stuff down. She try to organize stuff she is learning. She's actually a good cartographer, and she is making she will eventually start making a catacomb map, and writing stuff is just something that is very typical for her. I think I will slowly wrap the stream up because I am already streaming for several hours, and I think I should rest a bit. I am not used to it. So um, thank you, thank you all for coming. I really enjoyed it, and thank you for all your questions. It was really interesting, and thank you for your time. I hope you find my stream interesting, and I will definitely finish this Zelda fan art and post it on my Instagram and Twitter and those kind of stuff. And you will definitely find the high-rise of this fan art on my Patreon page. So, by the way, don't forget to check it if you're interested. So, I am going to wrap it up. Um, thank you a lot, and hope to see you again. I will definitely make more streams. І дякую всім, хто зараз є з моєї україномовної аудиторії. Вибачте, що так сьогодні здебільшого розмовляла англійською, було багато питань англійською мовою, і я вже так забула перемикатись. Тому, якщо що. О, thank you for posting a link for my Patreon. Thank you really. Отже, якщо що, вибачте, що сьогодні було більше англійською, і наступного разу, якщо я заговорю знати англійською, не забувайте мене перемикати і задавати мені питання українською, щоб я українською також більше розмовляла. Трошки важко якось перемикатись між двома мовами. Отже, сподіваюсь, вам сподобався сьогоднішній стрім. Я дуже вдячна за ваш візит, за вашу компанію. Дякую всім. І па-па! Thank you all. Bye-bye. Have a nice day, evening, or whatever. Bye.